Hi, welcome back. I'm Julie Burns, and this is a continuation of my class on the Monas Hieroglyphica or Hieroglyphic Monad of Dr. John D. We're up to Theorem 11 now. I promised you this would be a relatively short class, so let me share my screen here and we will get going. In the last theorem, Theorem 10, we had a very long class applying Theorem 10 back to the first 10 theorems. And we had the sort of Kabbalistic Big Bang. So now time has begun, and we're going to call this class a dotted vesica. I'll talk about what I mean about that as we go through the theorem. If you've been taking this class with me, you know the spiel here. We've already had quite a few videos of contexts, looking at the letter to Maximillian, the letter to the printer, the first 10 theorems. This is not the place to jump in. What I'm talking about will make no sense. So please watch the first videos. I've got the link to the whole playlist below and also one that is just the theorems. If you watch nothing else, at least watch the one on Theorem 10 or you will be kind of lost, even though this video is short. We've looked at how D is through cosmogenic text or texts about the creation of the universe, like Genesis, like Plato's Timaeus, like the Sefer Yetzirah. He is looking at the creation of the world, and now time is beginning. He has just taken us through Theorem 10. Link to that's below. I won't read over it here, but I want to remind you about the DOTA Catamari of Aries, same root as a dodecahedron, our perfect Platonic form, inscribed in a circle, the Platonic regular solid that looks most like a circle. And what a dodecatamorion is an astrological measure. We don't use it anymore. Now we use decades, but it would be basically the first 12th of the first sign of 12. And it's a flash of initiatory fire that we saw creating the tree. You also get allusions in there to another sharp-edged and pointed form, like the stillbone in the frontispiece. We've had at various places sharp pointy objects puncturing things like a sphere and giving birth to earth. Now in this theorem that has this drawing, we have a reference to the ministry of fire, and that might remind us of physical alchemy, the fire of the Athanor heating everything up from below. But the trouble is we're still in Theorem 10 in the world of perfect forms that are eternal, not the physical world. So something seems to be going on in these invisible folds. And remember, D's ternary refers to many things, Father, Son, Holy Ghost being one, but the eternal world of forms and the receptacle and the always moving, always changing world of the cosmos is another. So we're seeming to have references of time. Something seems to be starting, and indeed it's the Big Bang, and you flip the monad, and so this ministry of fire is now at the top, and it's a lightning flash going down the tree. For more on this, see Theorem 10. Also see my video on the Kircher tree and whether or not D is using it, or if it's passing through him, so to speak. I would say yes, it is. And now here we are at Theorem 11, a pretty short one. Here D says, the mystical sign of Aries. That's those two semicircles, which is formed out of two half circles connected at a common point, stands very fittingly at the place of the equinodal nukthemeron. Did I pronounce that correctly? You don't know, do you? And neither do I, because it's not a word we use in English. When Dr. Turner and I were translating this, we simply anglicized D's Latin word, which was a Latinization of an ancient Greek word. So what this word means, I'll get to in a minute, but you can infer it from the next sentence. In fact, the time of 24 hours apportioned in the measure of the equinox denotes our most secret proportions. I say "are" with reference to the earth. So now we're in the physical earth, the one we're standing on, which is also the Sephira Malkuth. A nukthemeron is, as I said, de-Latinizing a Greek word, which is a noun that means a day and a night, and it denotes the time which begins and ends when the setting sun intersects the horizon. And the spring equinox was the beginning of the year in D's time. So the first day of the sign and the first day of the dodecatamorion of Aries, Aries of Aries, the length of a day and night are absolutely equal. There's 24 theorems here, remember, in the hieroglyphic monad. So the 24 hours of day on Earth divided equally on the equinoxes to 12. The next theorem, 12, we'll see D playing around with all kinds of time measures, because what else is 12? Well, the number of months in the year, signs in the zodiac, and so on. In her German translation, Agnes Klein, who is a German translator, pointed out that D's unusual Latin word here probably does come from the Nycthemeron of Apollonius of Tyana, who's a famous Pythagorean, no surprise, and he's a reputed miracle worker. He wandered the Eastern Empire, and the way that one ancient writer, Philostratus, describes him, his life seems to have many similarities to that of Jesus. So there's that reason also that D might be using this unusual word. But what we're most interested in are what are these most secret proportions? You can probably guess from my title. This is a vesica piscis, right? So if you think of the 12 hours of the day being a circle, the 12 hours of night being a circle, they're absolutely equal. You have something like this very sacred symbol to people who are studying ancient geometry the ancient Greek way and contemplating forms. In fact, let's talk a little bit about this because it's going to be very important to Euclid, as I'll show you in just a sec here. So vesica piscis means the bladder of a fish. It's a geometric or a mathematical lens formed by the intersection of two discs, so that the center of this circle, you notice, is on the perimeter of the other and vice versa. In Christianity, it becomes a symbol of the ichthys, the intersection of the spiritual and material worlds. In other situations, it becomes a symbol of the vulva, or the birth into the physical world. That would make sense if you are looking at how the world of perfect forms is birthed into the world of motion that's always in change, where you can never step into the same river twice, as we've discussed. So other times a symbol of the Eucharist and many other things. But here's what's really cool about this. Well, those things are very cool also, but it's in the very first proposition of Euclid. Here this is in ancient Greek. I'm not expecting you to read it. I just want to show you what the first proposition of Euclid looks like. Drawing this shape is the first step also in creating an equilateral or equilateral triangle. So you just draw a line from there to there to there to there. You have an equilateral triangle. You have one down here too. So today we'd call that a 60, 60, 60 triangle, each of it 60 degrees. It'll be 1/6 the area of one of the circles, which is also in that proof. You can relate that 6 back to theorem 6 if you want. In that theorem, there's a hidden octad. Where would you get that? Well, first, there's a ternary and quaternary with this fire triangle, right? Because you put it in 3 dimensions, you get a tetrahedron, which is 4 equilateral triangles. But there's also this thing that is in the, you may say it on the next slide, but I'll just tell you now. The hidden octad in theorem 6, if you recall that, we refer it to a cube when you flip that, because you have 8 vertices in a cube, but then that is inscribed in an octahedron, and here you more overtly have the octahedron, which is the dual of a cube, and they flip back and forth. All right. Well, yes, I did say that down here. In fact, I was going to say a little bit more about the geometry, so let me do that. If you let the base of that equilateral triangle there be a unit, a monas. First of all, you might think, wait a minute, he means more than just a unit by monad, doesn't he? Well, yes, he does. It's the whole cosmos that are born. So is this that unit? Let's see. And let's remember what these 2 half circles would look like down here at the bottom of Aries. If this were modern geometry and we were using this as a unit, and we split it in half, then what we would get is that half equilateral triangle, by the way, that you have in the Timaeus, where air can turn into water and water can turn into fire, but neither of them can turn into earth. With earth, it has to be a mixture. And if you're thinking, wait, how do they turn into things? I thought there's no motion in the world of eternal forms. That's why people have argued about the Timaeus for 2,000 years. I'll just say, go explore the Timaeus and answer that on your own. But you would get, anyway, a half equilateral triangle. And that is what you're getting in modern math if you draw out a vesica that way. And if you draw this shape, you're going to get two circles that this line, this perpendicular would be a tangent and share this point where they intersect. All of these things are very fascinating to contemplate. Now, so if this is our secret proportion, and this is also a vulva-like or lens-like shape that is either going to let there be life or give birth to the cosmos, our secret proportions could be not only a vesica piscis, but something else. That is the non-Sephira dot. That shouldn't be possible because D, according to conventional wisdom, wouldn't know about it. But we've already noticed that the conventional wisdom that D doesn't know this arrangement of the tree of life is false. At least the one we looked at from the Latinized version of Gikatiya's Gates of Life didn't have these cross paths and didn't have these side paths, but it had all the Sephiroth with the same names, same attributions as used, say, later by Kircher, and frankly used in modern initiatory societies that have a Kabbalistic base who use Hermetic Kabbalah. So this raises a really interesting question, again, about how much did John Dee really know about Kabbalah? The idea of that vesica being associated with dot, and that being where the puncture is that then creates the middle pillar and then polarizes out to the left and right pillars, fits perfectly. Now we saw how another concept he couldn't know, Tikkun Olam from Lurianic Kabbalah, Isaac Luria being in Egypt and not having started writing at the time Dee is doing this. Well, that couldn't fit, but it could because the idea exists other places in Kabbalah before Luria. So how about with dot? Here, I would say that it's a harder argument, but it certainly fits perfectly. And if you are looking at the hieroglyphic monad in terms of Christian or Hermetic Kabbalah, it fits. Why not use it? Now, I would argue that since Gikatiya in the Hebrew that Riccio is translating, again, see either Theorem 10 or the video on the Kircher tree, that has dot in it. It's very clear, and it's associated with a puncture coming through and creating the middle pillar. So I would say, yes, it does, but the jury's out. So I will talk about that in my video on Hebrew sources below. I'll also have some questions there for Hermetic Kabbalists and ceremonial magicians. In the next theorem, we're going to have the zodiac, time is beginning. And what we're going to see is, no surprise, we go very quickly from time beginning to wondering about the end of times. Dee is nothing if not an apocalyptic writer. Okay, I will pause this recording here and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.